remarkable. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to Enough Rope. It's often said that Australians are apathetic when it comes to politics, but my first guest puts paid to that. There's hardly an Australian alive who hasn't got a strong opinion about her. For 8 years, she has aroused both religious devotion and volcanic anger. Her every move has been surrounded by controversy, and with that controversy, often extreme heat. I recorded this interview with my guest last Wednesday, just before she nominated for the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome Pauline Hanson. You're taller than me, that's not allowed. Pauline, welcome to Enough Rope. You've got 6 brothers and sisters, and you reckon you're the quiet one in the family. What was your family life like?
Oh, it's, yes I am. I'm the 4th girl and the 5th down the line. So it's been a wonderful childhood. I have to say that. I had wonderful parents and I love them dearly. My mother passed away in 1998, 6 years ago, and Dad's still alive, he's 85. I suppose growing up with 6 brothers and sisters, you had to learn how to share. We couldn't fight or carry on. Mum said, get out the backyard if you're going to, and of course we read in a shop. She used to, if we started fighting, carrying on, she'd get a potato or get a tomato and throw it at us. And so. Was
she a good shot?
Oh yes, too right. She used to go to the exhibition. She used to hit the donkeys, and she always won the chocolates. so she was very good.
I remember seeing a story way back about you and your family on 60 Minutes, and I remember your mum saying a thing about the yellow race will rule the world. Where did she get that from?
Well, you ask a lot of the older generation, because a lot of the older generation will tell you exactly the same thing. And when she said that, I thought, oh God, Mum, please. But it was really something that was actually taught them or told to them, and I don't know where it came through or where it came from, but that was just Mum's opinion.
When you were a kid, did that sort of talk scare you? Did that concern you?
No, that wasn't the talk of the day at all. So I was so surprised when Mum actually came out. Yeah.
Were you aware of Asians and Aborigines when you were a kid? Were they in your neighbourhood?
No, there wasn't actually at Wollongabba. I don't recall it. Even if there was, it never sort of worried. We didn't worry about all this that was going on. I think what's happened over the years is made it worse. I think it's drawn more attention to it. You see, I don't look at a person, the colour of the skin or their cultural background. What I'm interested in is, are you Australian? Do you love this country as much as I do? Would you stand up and fight for it? Do you want the same values and way of life that I want? You know, and look, my grandparents, on both sides, came out from England and Ireland, and like many other Australians that I know and have supported me over the years, have come from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, but they've come here to Australia for a new way of life. And what I can't understand is, why come here and try and change our country into the place that you've come from? And all I ask of people is, come here, respect our country, respect our laws, our culture, our way of life. Be Australian, join us, enjoy this beautiful country and everything that it has to offer.
Your dad actually didn't want you to go into politics, did he? He said, don't do it, it's a dirty game. Did you have any idea how dirty?
It was so funny. I was in local government for a year, and then I lost that on preferences and boundary changes. So then I decided to stand for federal politics in 1995. I was finally endorsed by the Liberal Party in November, and in January, Robert Tickner, who was then the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs under the Labor government, he said, Aboriginal deaths in custody, well, maybe we shouldn't lock up any Aboriginals. And I thought, hang on a minute, these are Australians, these are people who commit crimes against society. Well then, if you're not going to lock up Aboriginals, then don't lock up anyone. And what I was saying is, that's not the solution to it. You've got to treat everyone equally, and people must be responsible for their actions. So I wrote this letter to the newspaper, and of course then it started from there. It came from Howard that I actually had to go, and the Liberal Party sacked me out of the party. And of course that was the end of it, and I was disendorsed. And when I went and saw Dad, he said to me when I walked in, he said, "Why did you open your mouth?" And I said, "Dad, maybe I'll never change anything, but I know something. It's because of people like you and your attitude. That's why things will never change." I said, "Maybe I won't." I said, "Well, I won't know unless I have a go." And I said, "I'm having a go."
Well, let's take a look at, we've got some of probably the most famous maiden speech in the history of the Australian Parliament. We've got some of it now.
"I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians. Between 1984 and 1995, 40% of all migrants into this country were of Asian origin. They have their own culture and religion, form ghettos and do not assimilate."
Now, all hell broke loose after that maiden speech.
I know.
What do you
believe
remember of that time after that?
I've got to say, when I went into that house to deliver that speech, that was my first speech in Parliament. I was so nervous, my knees were shaking. You could tell, you know, coming across there and delivering that speech. The switchboard lit up at Parliament House, actually, they couldn't handle the calls. One telephonist that worked there 17 years, she said she'd never seen anything like it before.
I think part of the reason that many people liked you is because they saw a great strength in there, in your maiden speech and the way you conducted yourself. And in that strength, there was also an undercurrent of anger. I'm just wondering where that, because you spoke for a lot of people, where that anger came from.
Because everything's been, we've been suppressed in how we're supposed to feel, and I think where the government policies has taken us over the years hasn't helped anyone. You know, hasn't helped the Aboriginal people, hasn't helped us as Australians, you know. It's caused a division between us. I didn't see that when I was a child, probably because I was very naive and I was in my own little world, but I've certainly seen it now. My kids have grown up with Aboriginal kids. My neighbours were Aboriginal kids. My home was open to them, you know. We are all Australians, and that's the bottom line. And since I've been on the scene, when I was campaigning in 1998, I had Amelia Campbell, who was actually, her grandfather was on the $50 note, an Aboriginal lady, and she came to a press conference and she had about 12 other people there, mainly women with their children, and she grabbed my hand, she held up my hand, she said, "Pauline, we've been hoping and praying for someone like you to come along and listen to us." And she told the media, she said, "Our women are being bashed and raped." She said, "Our kids are on the streets glue sniffing or on drugs," and she said, "No one cares. Because if you say anything you're criticised, you call a racist." You know, criticism is not racism, but until you actually start to debate these issues, are you going to find the answers? And they're just being used as pawns by the politicians and minority groups for their own justification. And it hurts me to see this happen to these people. So I'm sort of saying, let's do it differently. Let's see accountability. Let's give these people back their self-esteem and self-respect.
In many people's eyes, you were a racist. In your eyes, what's a racist?
Let's define the word what racist is. A person who believes that their race to be superior to another's. I've never advocated that, and I challenge anyone to tell me one thing that I've said that is racist. Criticism is not racism. Accountability is not racism. And that's what I've tried to say over the years.
Many people took your comments to mean other things. In that first 6 months between being elected member for Oxley and your maiden speech, over that time you said, amongst other things, we're in danger of being swamped by Asians, that we should cease all immigrations, that Aborigines were not more disadvantaged than white people, and that you would represent those in your electorate except Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders. Were you aware of the impact of what you were saying, whatever you meant, was having on many people's lives?
Now, you made a comment there about that I wouldn't represent the Aboriginal people. After I was elected to Parliament, I did an interview with the Australian over the phone, and the headlines came out saying that I wouldn't represent the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I was taken before the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity, and for 18 months this went on, to and froing over this comment. At the end of 98, I think it was, Sir Ronald Wilson came down with the finding that what I said was not racist at all. They had the full tape of the conversation that I had with the journalist. They actually took it completely out of context. So he actually found that it was not any racist comments, that I never said that I wouldn't represent the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Despite what you're saying about not appearing racist or not having a racist platform, your fellow travellers made it very hard for you to be disassociated from that. One Nation MP Jeff Knuth, I think I've got his name
from
right,
North Queensland.
said it would be better if the Aborigines went back to the pastoralists and said, can we just, we're not going to take your land, we'll just live on it and work for you if you'll give us a bit of meat.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. Andrew,
well, you were aware of it at the time, because
a
few days later, the point I'm making, I'm not trying to pin you on something here, is that these were your fellow travellers, your health spokesman Ray Denton actually publicly questioned the statistics on Aboriginal infant mortality as though they might have been made up for some other reason. Now this is, of course, as you know, one of the great health problems we have in this country. And it wasn't just what you said, it was what was said in...
radicals that tagged themselves to me. They saw me come along, and this woman come along, and they thought there was their platform to go and say whatever they wanted to do.
But he was your health spokesperson.
We were, I wouldn't even know, I don't even know who he is. I know Jeff Knuth, he actually won his seat.
Ray Denton, he launched your health policy.
Yeah, probably from New South Wales seat, was he?
Yeah, but
probably 19.
he did, that was the One Nation health policy in that election. There was also...
David Ettridge was, worked with these candidates as well, and we actually, if anyone actually came in with these radical views or anything like that, we got rid of them out of the party. We didn't want that. That was not what we were about. We just endorsed some of these candidates.
One was an MP and the other was your health spokesperson, so they were representatives of the party. There were others, fellow travellers. Pauline Nation's The Truth, the book you published in '97.
Which one?
Pauline Nation's The Truth. Do you remember that book?
The Truth. It was that was written by some other people who actually.
But it was called, and you launched it and had the copyright on it. The interesting thing about that is it had at the front some of your speeches, which were legitimately yours, but then it also included material written by people connected with very extreme right-wing groups who said things like Aborigines were cannibals, and that Australia would one day be part of the United States of Asia and part of a conspiracy to exterminate the white Anglo-Saxon males. Did you realise that these things were being published in your name?
No.
How did that happen?
Like I said, at the time, there was so much happening with the media, and you just cannot do everything yourself. You just cannot sit down and read every book or every article or know every candidate that stood.
But this is pretty important stuff. I mean...
Yep, and that's why you allow, that's why you delegate the jobs and people in the positions to actually sift through all this and do it. When you're a leader of a political party and in that position you take on that job, well then yes, you have to, be responsible for it because you're in that position. But when it got to a stage where it's all these, so much was happening and you can't do everything yourself and you've got to delegate the job and give the responsibility to someone else, but the buck stops with you, you just can't. And if you're going to do a decent job, if you're going to get people to respect you, your views and opinions, that's, I think that's why now I've just resigned from the party as national president in 2002, and I wish the party all the best, but I'm not a part of it.
Who do you trust now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in a lot of ways I think I look to my father for that guidance, and I think the people that were there, I think you really know who your friends are when you actually go through the time that I did last year, and you look at the people there that were really there for you, and you can't give up not trusting some people because it will be a very lonely life.
Let's talk about that time last year, August 20, I think it was, sentenced to 3 years in jail. Can you give us some idea of what it's like to be put in a van and taken away?
After we left the courtroom, and I think when I was taken through the door and they put the handcuffs on me, and just the sheer weight of the handcuffs, the realisation started to hit me and even the first time that I was put into a cell, we were taken downstairs and had to be strip searched, and then preparations were made to actually be taken in the van. And just that, your whole dignity is stripped from you, and here I kept professing my innocence to the Australian people, and oh no, I've got no problem, so I'm quite glad to go before my peers. But when your peers found you guilty, and yet what do you say to the Australian people? When you keep professing you're innocent and yet others find you guilty.
I assume that this prison experience will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And will shape you in some ways. Would that be a fair guess?
Yeah, it has. It's taken me an extremely long time, and I don't think I'll ever get over it.
You were acquitted, and all charges dropped. I want to show you a happy snap. I wonder if you spent any time in jail thinking at all about this man. Who, of course, funded Australians for Honest Politics, and which funded the litigation against you.
He did.
I'm going to ask you a very difficult question. In a wrestle to the death between Tony Abbott and David Oldfield, who would you be going for?
Look, I have my own opinion about both, and it's really...
Come on, don't sit on the fence, Pauline.
Look, I really don't. I think if they were both hit by a bus, I'd make sure that... I'd just make sure the job was done properly. Look, honestly, I've always said, if David Oldfield was ever, ended up in that final resting ground, I'd make sure sure is. I have so much, and I'm not a person to hate, and I also feel that you've got to get over things, but it's not the hatred that I have, it's the sheer frustration and anger that there was something there that could have grown, that I do believe that we need another political force, another voice in Australian politics.
We're in election 2004. Are you going to run again?
Yep.
Now, you said when you came out of jail...
I know.
...that you would have rocks in your head to run. So what's changed?
I went and saw my father a couple of months ago, and he said, "Are you going to have another go?" And I said, "Dad, I don't know. I don't know if I've got it in me to do it anymore." I said, "I've got the memories and everything that's happened over the years." He said, "You have got so much support from the Australian public." He said, "You've got to give it another go." Anyway, I thought about this, and then I finally decided, yep, I will. I want to be me. I don't want all the hangers-oners. I don't want the advisors and everyone else. I want it to be, this time, Pauline Hanson. And I want to be able to get up there in Parliament and represent the people, and I'd dearly love to go back and say, "I'm back." And Tony Abbott, I'd be the first one to say, "Hi, Tony." So I think that's what it is. And I think being an independent, it's so important that just for the average Joe Blow out there who knows that at least we've got one person there that's prepared to ask the tough questions, who's prepared to raise these issues, isn't a yes person. And I think that's what Australians need.
I have no doubts about your intent and your desire and your belief in yourself. But with respect, going back through your story tonight, and as we look at how you freely admit to people like David Oldfield manipulated you, you were taken for a ride by all sorts of people. You were betrayed, treated badly, you were misinformed, mistreated. There's a naivety to you, I think it's fair to say.
I think those years of naivety has diminished quite a bit. I've gathered knowledge, experience, political nous, strategy, understanding, and I've got a long way to go yet. But geez, I'm way up on what I was in 1996, Andrew.
Are you going to go to this election with stated policies?
No, I won't. Not as an independent. I'm not with a party, and I I'm not going to be government, Andrew, at all. And it'd be stupid on my part. You have to see who's going to be government. You actually have to see the legislation that comes through. Then you actually say that.
Do the Australian people have a right to know if they're voting for you, what they're voting for?
Well, the people in Queensland, they're the only people that will be able to vote for me. So this, to put policy up there is silly, because I'm not going to have an opportunity to put policy.
Do you still think, as you once did, that we could face a civil war in this country?
What I believe is you can't shut off what's happening throughout the rest of the world, what's happening in other countries. And unless we get it right, how do we know what's going to happen further down the track?
What does get it right mean?
You have to have cohesiveness. You actually have to have people that are working and pulling together as one. Don't create divisions. People that...
And how do you stop divisions in a society where
that's
in this room there'd be 100 different points of view?
You know, what annoys me so much is that the Australian people have been suppressed in their views and their opinions by policies and legislation that's set down by our so-called parliamentarians. Why the hell did they bring in a religious and racial and religious vilification law that shuts Australians down from having an opinion? I have a right to have an opinion, but I'm being shut down.
I would suggest you're one of the least shut down people I've ever seen. I mean, truly, isn't that true? I mean, the very fact we're sitting here tonight is testimony to the fact that you've had every opportunity to express yourself.
And I've been given a very good one tonight, and I really do appreciate that.
You said before, unless you've walked in my shoes, please don't judge me. Does that make you think differently about groups you may have attacked in the past, like Aborigines as a group? Would you represent them differently now from what you've learned?
I've never changed. I would actually stand up and fight for their issues, which I have done on many occasions.
So a statement such as you made in your maiden speech, that Aboriginal people are no more disadvantaged than white people, you still believe that to be true?
I suppose why I said that was I didn't want to see it as a put down. I was trying to draw the attention to the inequality in the system. You know, I don't see them, and I don't want to see them anything other than Australians.
You said before that, like many Australians, you don't have enough information about Iraq, you don't know, to make an opinion. But you're going to, if you're in the Senate, as an independent senator, you may have the balance of power in the Senate. You're going to be expected to know not just that, but a lot of other things. Last year in the Senate, there were 215 bills passed, 129 petitions. To give you some idea, Brian Harradine, who's retiring as an independent senator, the GST legislation was over 1,000 pages. The land rights legislation had 913 amendments, each one of which had to be read, understood, commented on, debated. Now, you've talked before about how you didn't know what was in the truth, about how people misrepresented you, how you couldn't control that, how you weren't prepared, indeed, to even address your own policies. Are you equipped to do this job?
I think I'm just as equipped to do it as any other member of Parliament, because they've got to read that 1,000 pages. They've got to read the legislation as well.
There's one other contest that you're going in for at the same time. The ballroom dancing program that you're doing. What can you tell me about this?
Oh, I couldn't believe I'm going to have the Australian public voting on me, for me on two different issues at the same time. And it's 8 celebrities. There's 4 men, 4 women, and I'm one of the 4 women. Has been selected to go into this dance competition.
So will you be still rehearsing for this during this election campaign?
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to be going from interviews and discussing policies to dancing lessons?
Yes.
Now, you know what's going to happen, don't you? People are going to say to you, if you're so concerned about the future of Australia, what are you doing dancing?
I know, I'm going to be criticised over that. It's not as if I've never been down the road before with politics, so it'll be interesting.
I can't be fairer than to suggest an election slogan for you, which combines your dancing and your politics.
Please don't. I've got my own...
It takes... No, you haven't heard it yet. You'll love it. It takes one to tango.
not bad, actually. I was thinking the one, give the girl a fair go.
Whatever happens,
Yeah.
as with all of us, I hope on your journey you continue to learn. Pauline Hanson, thank you very much.
Thank you.